If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India. It matters to India. It matters to India. And it matters to me. And it matters to me.
Well, you are watching NDTV. We are tracking the latest as far as Battleground Canada is concerned. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. All the extensive updates are right here on the NDTV network. Let's begin with the top headlines we're tracking currently. As far as the initial indications are concerned, Mark Carney's Liberal Party maintains the lead in Canada. While polls have already closed in the Atlantic region, they are set to close across Canada in a short while. Jagmeet Singh's NDP gains a lead in one seat. The magic number that his party is chasing is 12 to remain in power. Well, first results are being projected in Canada, where a snap election is being held to determine who will become the country's next Prime Minister. Polls have closed in the Atlantic region, and in just a short while from now, they will close across Canada. And like the United Kingdom, Canada has a first-past-the-post electoral system. What exactly does this mean? Let me break it down for you. The candidate who gets the most votes in each electoral district or riding wins that seat and becomes an MP. The share of votes doesn't have to be a majority, it just has to be one more vote than the second-place candidate. So under the system, a party can actually secure the most seats in the House of Commons without receiving the most votes across the whole country, which is exactly what happened in the last election. You see, back in 2021, the Liberals finished as the largest party by winning 47% of the seats, ahead of the Conservatives on 35%. In fact, what exactly are the key issues that Canada is basing this election on? You must note that the polls this time are seen as the most important election in a generation. It is one of the world's most prosperous nations and America's closest ally and trading partner. And Canada has found itself in recent months unexpectedly in the crosshairs of US President Donald Trump, targeted with tariffs and annexation threats as well. But the country has also seen many of its national accomplishments in regard to the economy and social issues slip, including higher costs of living, higher unemployment, tighter immigration laws, as we've been covering extensively on NDTV, rising housing costs, as well as a surge in homelessness and substance abuse. Many of these problems, not just in Canada, but in other advanced economies, were actually exacerbated by the pandemic, but Canadians are blaming a decade of Liberal Party rule under Justin Trudeau for the country's woes. What exactly is it that got 7 million people to head for advanced polling? Take a look at the key issues that Canada is basing this election on.
As Canadians head to polls, the major parties have made their final push to address some key issues. So what are they, and how are they shaping one of the most consequential elections in the country's history? One of the most important issues is the cost of living crisis, something Canada has been grappling with for years. Both the main parties, the Liberals and the Conservatives, have promised tax cuts for people in the lowest tax bracket. While Liberals are offering 1 percentage point cut, their opponents have promised to lower the rate from 15 to 12.75%. The campaigns have hinged on how the next leader would handle the trade crisis with its closest economic ally, the United States. The Conservatives have vowed tax relief for workers affected by the Trump tariffs. On the other hand, the Liberals have said they would help workers and businesses with the money raised by counter tariffs. Another issue affecting millions is skyrocketing home prices. While the Liberals want to create a federal entity that would act as a developer for affordable housing, the Conservatives are aiming to build 2.3 million homes in Canada in the next 5 years. With primarily these issues in mind, Canadians will decide who leads their country through some troubled times. Vishal Vivek's report for NDTV World.
Look, I'm a very different person from Justin Trudeau.
And let's quickly get in a view, the vantage point from Washington at the moment with Nick Harper, who joins us live. Nick, take us through what's happening from Washington's lens. Is there a tilt towards Mark Carney or Pierre Poilievre? What's the latest?
Yeah, a fascinating election for the United States to watch, no less because Donald Trump has made Canada so central to what he's been trying to achieve over the last 3 months, those 100 days that he's been in office, attacking Canada on multiple fronts, accusing them of letting in too many illegal migrants across the border that the US and Canada shares, accusing them of sending fentanyl across the border into the United States that then kills Americans, and of course attacking them with trade tariffs that he has placed on the US's northern neighbour. And on top of that, joking repeatedly about Canada becoming the United States' 51st state. Interesting that the two men really who are in contention of becoming the next Prime Minister, Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre, both of them have differing views of Donald Trump. Both of them have attacked him repeatedly, saying that he is trying to divide Canadians. But interesting that Mark Carney seems to have been the man who's been able to capture the message better than Pierre Poilievre. He's been able to unite Canadians in the face of Donald Trump. He's the man, I guess, who's been able to capture that advantage. Because bear in mind, Poilievre's Conservatives were far and away above in the polls about 3 months ago, before Donald Trump put those tariffs in place. And then Mark Carney, capturing that message of defiance against Donald Trump, surged in the polls. But of course, Poilievre, as a Conservative, is much closer in nature to Donald Trump, a Republican. Some have compared him, saying that he is a mini Trump, both of them against woke ideologies that they say have infected both the United States and Canada. And yet it might not be the person who wins tonight's election. It might be Mark Carney, who's clearly going to be a harder concept for Donald Trump to try and deal with over the coming months. He's already proven himself in the short time that he's been Prime Minister since Justin Trudeau stood down as someone who is fierily going to stand up for Canada's rights, for Canada's sovereignty, and for Canada's trade unity.
Nick, then, is the US viewing Mark Carney's rise as a direct pushback against Trumpism, against Trump's transactional nature and his protectionist policies?
Well, I think if Mark Carney wins tonight, there could be a question mark as to whether that could have happened if it was not for Donald Trump. We have a potential scenario here that Donald Trump is putting his stamp on a foreign government's election. Mark Carney potentially might not have stood a chance of winning, might not have stood a chance of keeping the Liberals in power for a fourth consecutive term if it was not for the fact that Donald Trump had launched that attack on Canada, trying to get it to become the US's 51st state, and launching a whole raft of tariffs upon it. Pierre Poilievre, with the Conservatives, were in such a strong position because the country was disgruntled. They were unhappy with Justin Trudeau. They were unhappy of 10 years of him in power, with the Liberals fronting the country, and the Conservatives were saying it was time for change. However, when Donald Trump launched his tariff attacks, Pierre Poilievre didn't pivot to the moment in a way that Mark Carney did. Poilievre was continuing to push the idea that it was time to push the Liberals out, whereas Mark Carney was trying to unite Canadians around the threat of Donald Trump. And I think by capturing that better than the Conservatives were able to do, I think put Carney in a much stronger position. So Donald Trump, it could be argued, has potentially had a direct result on this election, especially if Carney is the victor tonight.
On that note then, Nick, is Washington also seeing Canada's election as a test case for whether democracies can actually resist the strongman politics trend?
Well, potentially, yes. And I think Donald Trump has made it very clear that he is involved in Canada, that he wants to be more closely involved in Canada. It'll be, we'll find out later on tonight whether or not Canadians feel that Donald Trump is the central issue, because as we heard just a moment ago, there are a whole raft of domestic issues that Canadians care very strongly about, everything from taxation to housing, even to climate change. It just so happens that Donald Trump has, in some respects, infected the election, becoming a dominant issue. We'll have to wait and see whether Canadians have decided that they are going to try and stand up to that strong man in politics, to stand up to the person that they feel is threatening their sovereignty. And I think Mark Carney, of course, has really tried to make that a rallying cry. He even said in campaigning over the weekend that Donald Trump was trying to break Canada so that America can own us. Canadians have said time and again they do not see that as a funny joke, this idea of Canadian sovereignty being expelled, of it becoming part of the United States. That joke, they say, wore thin a very long time ago. And they, of course, have seen that surge in nationalistic spirit, something that Mark Carney has managed to capitalise on, and I guess in part, therefore, helped by Donald Trump and the rhetoric that he has been putting out against Canada.
Nick, as always, thank you so much for taking us through the latest developments and also contextualising all the key details for us. Let's get in a word from Vancouver and Brampton at the moment with my colleagues Maha Siddiqui and Vikram Chaudhary. Maha, to you first. Liberals are taking an early lead, as we can see, with 50.6%, as Conservatives are trailing at about 38.8%. If you can just pull that map up for you, which has the latest updates. Maha, to what extent is this election then a rejection of Trump-style populism rather than an endorsement of the Liberals?
Well, if you go by the way Donald Trump has been talking about these elections and also on Truth Social putting out messages again this morning when Canada started voting, it is clear that he is the big issue in the Canadian election. And the voters are choosing a leader today, needless to say, at the current moment, somebody who can take on Donald Trump. In that context, if you see some of the commentary here, some of the in fact, political comedy that goes around in the country as well, if I can refer to it, they have all been talking about Pierre Poilievre as being Trump-light, and therefore clearly looking at Pierre Poilievre as somebody who has in the past aligned with Donald Trump, and therefore even though at the last minute he tried to take a very strong stand against Donald Trump, even today, when that message was put out on Truth Social, Pierre Poilievre responded to it, saying that never will Canada be the 51st state of the United States. However, they took very long in pivoting their campaign towards what was the big issue for the Canadians over the last 3 months. And that was the annexation threat from the US and the economic coercion coming their way in the form of tariffs. And that's exactly where Mark Carney's campaign was able to capture the voters. They were able to project him as a person, a serious contender to take on Donald Trump because of his past record of being the governor of Bank of England, Bank of Canada, being a banker, former banker, an economist. And even though he's a political outsider, suddenly the voters started gravitating towards him as an entity who would be one person who can negotiate at equal terms with US President Donald Trump. And that really is the big issue, the dominant issue. And we are seeing the voting today that has taken place and the advance voting as well. Remember, 7.3 million people came out, 25% higher than 2021. All this indicative of the fact that the people in Canada want to give a majority to a party, which is likely to be the Liberals, as the trends are suggesting at the moment. And this is largely to give the Prime Minister enough support and be able to give him that heft to be able to take on US President Donald Trump.
Right, Maha, just before I let you go, among South Asians in British Columbia, where you are, is there concern that Trump's hostile posture, if Mark Carney takes the hot seat, will create uncertainty for Canadian trade with India and Asia?
See, one issue that was dominant for the people of Indian origin was also the issue of immigration. And on that count, they perceived Pierre Poilievre's politics, or the politics of the Conservatives, in alignment with somewhat of what the US talks about. The fears with regards to an immigration policy that may be that may not be conducive to this community is something that that the Liberals they find more comforting in that direction, and therefore for them the issue of which way they want to vote is determined by some of their own concerns as well. As far as the issue of trade overall is concerned, and the issue of trade with regards to British Columbia itself is concerned, British Columbia has lumber trade specifically with the US, and that has been mired in a dispute between the two sides for many years now. And therefore, trade relations, if you only specifically look at the province of British Columbia, that is also something that was a hard-pressing issue for BC. And people in BC understand the repercussions that they could have faced because of Donald Trump and his tariffs that he was imposing. Of course, some of the bigger tariffs in the auto sector are hitting more on the East Coast. But overall, the understanding that the Canadians have with regards to tariffs, how it could hit them, how it could raise, in fact, the cost of living for people here is all something that is determining the voter turnout today, as well as the results that we'll be seeing today.
Thanks so much, Maha, for joining us with the lowdown from Vancouver. Let's get in a word from Brampton at the moment with Vikram. Vikram, do issues like rising cost of living and affordability outweigh global concerns like US-Canada relations for voters in Brampton?
Absolutely. I think, as we discussed earlier, it was a question of survival for Canadians, and the more of unity. That was nationalism and unity which took the center stage. Of course, inflation, affordability, and economics, economy in shatters. That was one of the issues, but that was 3 months ago. If today's vote share of Liberal Party is, if you take into account, 2 months is a long time in politics, and that's the testimony here. When Mark Carney, was sworn in, he made it very clear. I think the first thing he had to clear is that he doesn't carry the baggage from legacy of Justin Trudeau. He said that he's nothing to do with Justin Trudeau, and there's no similarity between him and Justin Trudeau. Axe the tax was one of the slogans that Mark Carney was champion of. What happened is that the day Mark Carney took over, he abolished the taxes. So there was no tax on carbon. So that was a major relief for consumers out here. But besides the point, I think what Canadian people, they realize that other things can be taken care of later on, but what needs to be dealt right now is Donald Trump. So Donald Trump's rhetoric was the major concern and one of the top issues. And as we've seen in the last couple of months, Mark Carney, all of a sudden with his statesmanship, he wasn't a champion of slogans, but his polished style and his bureaucratic style, I think that went home with most of the voters. What we're seeing perhaps is 2021 Liberal Party was at its peak, the popularity was at its peak, but still they failed to get their own majority. So their reasons, their political analysts who believe that there
Vikram,
could
I
be
must
reasons.
inform, I sincerely apologize, I'm cutting you through. We have breaking news coming in at the moment. CBC is calling it for the Liberals. As per their preliminary data analysis, CBC is saying that Liberals will indeed be leading Canada into this next phase. That's the breaking news we're tracking at the moment as far as Battleground Canada is concerned. CBC clearly saying that the Liberal Party is likely to win. We'll keep tracking all the latest updates for you. Let's just get in a quick word from Michael before we go into a short commercial break. Michael, CBC now saying the Liberal Party is likely to win and Mark Carney is likely to be in the hot seat?
Yes, that's true, and there's probably going to be a minority government. That's what it looks like. I will say that I think this is a swan song for Jagmeet Singh. He's having a challenge in his own riding and performed poorly in Quebec and has lost something like 6 seats. So I think the NDP party will have to consider a new leader. I think that Mark Carney will probably take a minority government. But that means that we're going to be in a perilous situation because formerly the NDP was the one that held a little bit of the judgment, if you wish, because they were aligned with the Liberals. Now with Pierre Poilievre as the official opposition, we may have a little more turmoil. And then the Parti Québécois, the Bloc Québécois, will have a lot more power. So it's going to be an interesting ride for the next little while. But they still need some seats to get a majority, and a lot of Canada's West is still to come in, which is very conservative. So I think it may be still a little tighter than those would think. But there are some public broadcasting entities that have called the election for the Liberals because there's only so many seats left.
Right. Michael, meanwhile, how unprecedented would you say this political comeback is for the Liberals compared to Justin Trudeau's reign and now under Mark Carney and the result that we're seeing as far as preliminary information is concerned?
Yes, I would agree with you. I think unprecedented. First of all, when you consider that the Conservatives had a 20-point lead approximately 6 months ago, and then for the last 3-6 weeks, I mean, the Liberals have had over a 10-point lead. Considering the sentiment of Canadians for the carbon tax and the distaste that they had for the way Trudeau was conducting this country, it's quite a remarkable save, as one would say, that Mark Carney has been able to do. So I think it's going to be quite interesting. There may be a challenge, I will say, with the leadership of the Conservatives, because we'll have to see if Pierre Poilievre could hold on to it.
Well, we'll unpack all the nitty-gritties in just a moment after this very short commercial break. Michael, do stay on with us. We're back in a moment with the latest. Canada is at a crossroads. Political upheaval, economic uncertainty, and rising voices demanding change.
As the battle for power intensifies, NDTV World brings you unmatched coverage from the heart of the storm.
Welcome to Canada Election Watch, your window into a nation in churn and what it means for us in India. From ground reports to expert analysis, from diaspora dynamics to the diplomatic impact, NDTV World is tracking every twist and turn.
Canada Election Watch, only on NDTV World. Stay ahead of the story, stay with us.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India. It matters to India. And it matters to me. And it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaru. Only on NDTV 24/7.
Non-stop coverage of Battleground Canada continues on the NDTV network. Let's get you a quick update from Toronto with my colleague Yash Chawla, who joins us live from Richmond Hill. Also, for a view from Washington, we have with us David K. Johnston. Yash, to you first. As we were talking about how the attitudes have changed, the key issues, but is economic anxiety, whether it's jobs, inflation, or trade, overpowering cultural issues in this election cycle? We're given to understand, as per CBC's initial analysis, that the Liberals are going to be in power and Mark Carney is going to be in the hot seat.
Yeah, absolutely. The CBC has called it. The decision desk has said over 50% vote coming in for them so far, and they're going to have a minority government. But yes, to the earlier question that you asked, yes, the issues of jobs and economic prosperity is one of the primary, should have been one of the primary driving forces for elections in this country. But unfortunately, as what happened with the elections across the border, the new president, Donald Trump, or re-elected President Donald Trump has kind of called in the shots for elections in Canada as well. And the influence is hard to miss. And I think that has been summarized by everyone else.
Right. Yash, we will, of course, revert to you regarding the initial preliminary data that comes in from CBC as well. But I want to get in a quick word from David K. Johnston for Washington's view. David, as always, thanks so much for your time. Tell our viewers, how closely is Washington watching all the developments as far as Canada's election is concerned? And what's exactly at stake for the U.S.?
Yeah, Americans think of Canada as sort of this not terribly important neighbor unless they understand how much trade goes on between the U.S. and Canada. And I think the clear result here is that Canadians don't like Donald Trump's threats to their sovereignty. In fact, this evening I talked to two NDP voters who told me they voted with the Liberals because they wanted to make sure the Liberals had a majority and were in charge, not through a coalition government, but directly, solely because of their concerns about Donald Trump and, in fact, whether he might literally invade Canada.
David, I want to touch upon a very specific aspect with you. How significant would you argue is Canada's stability for Washington's broader Indo-Pacific strategies against China specifically?
Well, given the volume of trade and how complicated it is back and forth between the U.S. and with Canada, not having Canada as a partner would be a real problem. And I think the biggest thing that the Trump administration could cause to happen is for the EU, the UK, Canada, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, to form and India, to form a free trade coalition that excludes the United States. That would be an enormous damage to the United States. I don't think that Donald, who's not a strategic thinker, however, would appreciate or understand that until something like that actually happens.
Well, David, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much, as always, for making time for us and joining us on NDTV. We'll keep tracking all the latest key developments for you as far as the election in Canada is concerned. Slipping into a very quick commercial break for now.
Do you really know the company you invest in? What is the real picture behind presentations and claims? Is the outlook as rosy as the company claims? Know Your Company, powered by NDTV Profit Research, shines a light on the biggest stock market movers.
News is not just headlines, it is what impacts you. And news should never be mistaken for noise. What matters is the reality. Accurate, in-depth, and with the right perspective. For over 20 years, I have been a journalist, and never has clarity mattered more than now. At Newsnight, we go beyond the surface. We dissect the details, challenge the narratives, and bring you the unparalleled clarity you deserve in a world clouded by misinformation. We are bold, we are direct. Newsnight, for the news in your interest. Only on NDTV 24/7.
How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights? We bring you a show where every question is answered, where every debate finds its resolution, where every story finds its conclusion.
Hello and good morning. Welcome to Breakfast Show. I'm Radhika Ramaswamy joining you from Mumbai studios. We also have Divya Vadwa joining us from Delhi. It's been 1 week since the Kashmir terror attacks. India steps up hunt to nab these terrorists. Pakistan, of course, continues to violate a ceasefire amid escalating tensions between the two countries. We have both Shiv Arur as well as Nazir Masoodi who are reporting from Kashmir, who will give us all the latest from the ground.
That's right, Shiv and Nazir taking us through violation across the ceasefire agreement along the line of control. We're going to get you the latest when it comes to what has really been said at the UN by the UN representative in regard to Pakistan being a rogue state. We'll also get you the latest from the Canada polls, and of course the inauguration of the Grand Jagannath Dham temple complex will take place in Diga with a sacred ritual. This is a ritual that is going to be taking place today, and the Pran Pratishtha ceremony will take place tomorrow. But it seems like Mark Carney is all set to become the leader of Canada. Shiv, over to you.
That's right. It's been 1 week since the Pahalgam massacre today. And remember that the perpetrators of that massacre have still not been found. Various actions have been taken. The entire line of control has escalated into a tense frontier. And there continues to be a great deal of suspense over what India's larger next action is going to be. I will be bringing you everything that's happened in the last 1 week and what to expect next.
Right, Shiv will get us all the details. Let's just first get you the headlines. It's been a week since the attack that took place in Pahalgam that claimed 26 innocent lives, but the hunt continues, that massive hunt to nab the terrorists responsible for the terror attack. Now it's the 5th night of ceasefire violation that has been reported along the line of control by Pakistan.
India shreds Pakistan at UN over Pahalgam attacks. India's deputy envoy to UN says Pakistan a rogue state. Pakistan minister's confession is not a surprise, she says.
Karnataka's price war, this is in regard to the BJP versus the Congress trading charges. The BJP launching its protest against the Congress.